And a happy weekend to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. We're going to break down your weekend forecast day by day for any outdoor plans that you may have. Go ahead and give you a bit of a tease that, yes, you're going to need that rain jacket or that umbrella handy basically all throughout Friday and Saturday. But if you're tuning into this on Sunday, Sunday is shaping up to be the best day of the weekend. So we do have a new Future View run that we're going to go over. But let's go over your headlines as we go across the next week here in Central Georgia and get into the last couple of days of August next week, which is so hard to believe already. So a messy Friday and Saturday will kickstart the first 2/3 of your weekend, but we're trying to dry out by the time we go into Sunday and especially Monday. Cooler and drier next week. That's going to be a big headline and something really, really nice to look forward to. We're definitely going to have our fair share of at least some false fall weather during the morning hours. Once we go into the afternoons, we'll still have some temperatures that are well below average, but I don't know if they necessarily constitute as fall weather. So this past Thursday, we hit a high temperature of 94. We've been hanging around in the low 90s for most of the work week, and Friday is going to kind of be the beginning of the pattern change. So 94, 2 degrees above average this time of year. The low was 71 that we hit Thursday morning. That was 1 degree above average. So we continue to see these average numbers get a little bit lower as we go about a course of a week, maybe a week and a half. But we're still not flirting with any of the record-breaking territory. Definitely don't want to be flirting with these record high temperatures like we were just about 3.5 weeks ago. But we did record some rain Thursday evening at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. Just over a ½ inch of rain, so we continue to see that year departure. That's kind of where we should be compared to average so far in the year of 2025. We are hovering over 4 inches above where we should be. Sunrise was at 7:02 Thursday morning, and 8:12 is when the sun finally did set on Thursday evening. The hours of daylight will continue to get shorter and shorter as we go into the fall and eventually into the beginning of winter. That first day of winter is officially going to be the shortest day in terms of hours of daylight that we do have in a calendar year. So your forecast for your Friday, not as hot is one of the main headlines, but obviously it's going to come at a bit of a cost. Widespread cloud cover along with some on and off showers and storms are going to do a good job at keeping that high temperature at bay, along with some morning time cloud cover that we had during the morning hours on Friday. High temperature of 92, that's our average high this time of year. We'll have a forecasted high of 85 for Friday, and we're going to keep the 80s around for all of the weekend. So, of course, we do have humidity in the forecast, but this graphic looks so much better than what I have been showing you over the course of the work week. We were seeing heat indices peak somewhere around the upper 90s, near 100 degrees. Well, how about peaking at 90 degrees during the heat of the day in the afternoon? That is definitely a pleasant change of pace. Maybe still feeling a tad bit warm when you get some breaks in the cloud cover, get some peaks of sunshine. And a couple areas will probably feel like the low 90s, but overall, this is a pleasant change of pace, and we're not dealing with 100s, 105s, 110s, like I said, that we were dealing with almost nearly a month ago. Now let's take a look at another big talking point that we will have this weekend. We do have a flood watch in place for almost all counties here in Central Georgia. Jasper County, Monroe, Lamar, Upson, Crawford, Taylor, and Macon counties are the only ones not included in this. Not to say that some isolated flash flooding couldn't happen in those areas, but the chances of rain are looking greater farther to the east as we go across the course of this weekend. So what we're going to be looking out for are those flash flood warnings that can kind of pop up in an instant. And we don't really talk about them too much, but obviously as of recent weeks, we've seen our fair share of flash flood warnings. It's something you should definitely still take serious if it is issued into your portion of your county where you do live, because low-lying areas near bodies of water, especially if you live near a creek or a stream, we can start to see the runoff associated with kind of those small bodies of water really get a whole lot larger, and the flood watch will be in effect until 2 a.m. on Sunday. Look out for those areas that don't drain well as well. You kind of get into those little valleys maybe, or kind of the gutters over by the sides of roads. Those are probably going to have some ponding of water if you do see a couple of thunderstorms that pop up this weekend, because these thunderstorms, they're going to have heavy rainfall rates, and along with that, they're going to kind of sit over the same area. They're going to have some pretty slow motion to them. So they're going to kind of meander and just continue to dump bucket after bucket of rain over a specific area, but that's going to be local areas. It's not going to be widespread across all of these areas in the flood watch, but all of the areas outlined in this watch do have the potential for seeing maybe some scattered or even some isolated flash flooding. So let's go into the latest run of Future View. We'll start at the noon hour on Friday. It does look like mostly cloudy skies are continuing into the afternoon hours. Still a couple of isolated sprinkles in the picture. We'll see some patches of some yellow, maybe some red colors enveloped within some of this scattered rain. But overall, Future View is looking a lot better than it did Wednesday and Thursday when we were looking ahead to Friday. It was saying the afternoon all the way into the evening was going to be basically a complete washout with plenty of showers, and not only showers, some pretty substantial rainfall rates. We were seeing widespread yellow, orange, even some dark red across central Georgia, which didn't look like it was going to shape up for a very nice forecast for football Friday night. Well, now the rain is mainly of the hit or miss nature, not necessarily widespread, but it does look like you have the potential for seeing some scattered showers and even some thunderstorms all the way through your Friday afternoon. And as we transition into the evening, that rain is still in the picture. So 7 o'clock, this is when many high school football games are going to be kicking off on Friday evening. Not the best forecast, but there are some dry areas. So what that means, the on again and off again rain, that does mean there's going to be off periods. That means there's going to be periods where you get clearing and cloud cover, just some mostly cloudy skies, as opposed to receiving the rainfall. You want to make sure that you're making the most out of those dry periods because they don't look to come around too much over the course of this weekend. But of course, bring the rain gear, the poncho out to all the football games that you're heading out to on Friday evening. And hopefully you can get the games in. If we do have some strikes of lightning followed by some rumbles of thunder, that of course is going to result in some delays. I believe it's about a 45-minute delay if you have a lightning strike within about a 5-mile radius of where you are. And each time you do have a lightning strike within that radius, the clock resets. So that 45-minute clock goes all the way back to the top. And if you continue to just have a thunderstorm that's sitting over the same area, which a lot of these do have the potential to do, it's probably going to reset that clock a lot. And I would imagine there's going to be some postponing and some canceling of some games later this evening. But we do try to see maybe some clearing in some areas as we go into the nighttime hours. Still plenty of rain that's in the near vicinity of central Georgia. And the last two model runs of Future View have actually been hitting at a good cluster of showers and some thunderstorms hanging around until the midnight hours, specifically in our west and southwesternmost counties. Not necessarily sold on the fact that that is going to exactly happen. We saw on Thursday that we only had about a 40% chance of rain, and that was mainly popping up in the afternoon hours, but we actually had widespread showers and thunderstorms that lingered on into most of the nighttime hours. They were definitely keeping me up and awake at about 9 and 10 o'clock on Thursday evening, trying to hit the hay and get ready for that early morning wake-up call that I have each morning. But the rain should fizzle out overnight, so we'll get some clearing overnight. We'll still have a lot of standing water on the surface as we welcome in Saturday morning. But along with that, Saturday morning going to start out very similar to how Friday morning started. Widespread cloud cover and a couple of isolated light showers that you could run into maybe on your morning commute out and about. If you're heading to work on Saturday, you work those weekends during the morning. Well, that's what could be the case. Once again, don't pay attention to the specific location of where the rain's popping up, just more so the potential. And that potential for rain does still exist as we go into lunchtime, going into the afternoon hours at about 3 o'clock. We'll see some spots of clearing in the cloud cover, but still scattered showers and a couple of storms going to be possible. Then going into Saturday evening at 6 p.m., this might be our first sign of finally getting out of this gloomy and dreary stretch. So hopefully 9 p.m. on Saturday, we can start to really dry out and finally start to wrap up the weekend on a relatively dry note. Here's what Sunday morning is looking like. Maybe a little bit of cloud cover and possibly a light sprinkle shower in the picture. But most of Sunday afternoon does look pretty conducive for outdoor plans. It looks like we'll get plenty of sunshine, and you will notice that Sunday is going to be a bit warmer on the high temperature side of things than Friday and Saturday. So 4 p.m. we're continuing with the dry weather, but then it's kind of hard to see because typically when a frontal boundary comes through, we're used to a continuous line of rain and thunderstorms. Well, this frontal boundary, it is going to be a strong one, but it's just not going to have a lot to work with in terms of warmer temperatures and maybe a whole lot of moisture, but it could still create some scattered shower chances ahead of it as it does push through. You see these winds coming out of the northwest behind this frontal boundary. So sometime in the later hours of Sunday into really early on Monday morning, this frontal boundary does look to begin its push into central Georgia. May take a while for it to actually get through, but I promise you it is going to make a full passage through the area. And behind it, not only are we going to have some drier air, but we're actually going to have some cooler air, which we'll talk about towards the end of this extended forecast. So your football Friday night specific forecast, just be thankful for these temperatures, somewhere in the low to mid 80s, maybe a little bit warmer if you do get some sunshine, especially around the tailgate time. But you will have some rain and storm chances all the way through your high school football games this Friday evening. And at the very least, you should remain mostly cloudy. So the cloud cover is going to do a very good job of limiting that warm up. Those temperatures are going to be probably around 10 to maybe even 12 degrees below average for this time of year. And as you progress into the nighttime hours, those temperatures, they are only going to get lower. How about some upper 70s as you're getting your final score on a lot of the games that are out at the gridiron later on Friday evening. But if you're watching this for Saturday and you're heading to the Mercer football game, because Mercer kicks off in week 0, so we actually have a Central Georgia team that is kicking off on week 0, giving you something to look forward to. If you're looking for a game to watch, you're not too interested in all of those maybe week 0 matchups that are pretty lackluster all across the country, except for Ireland. Very excited for that game, Kansas State and Iowa State. But the Mercer Bears will be squaring off against UC Davis. Yes, UC as in California. Don't know how Mercer drew this end of the straw, only having to travel over to Montgomery as opposed to California having to come all the way across the country for a game. But nonetheless, hopefully the jet lag does affect them and the Bears can start out the season 1-0. This is your forecast over in Montgomery, Alabama on Saturday afternoon. 4 p.m. for the tailgate. Pack a raincoat. We do have the chance for some isolated showers all throughout the day, or I guess all throughout the afternoon and evening, rather, I should say, over in Alabama. I don't think the rain chances are looking as confident as what we have here back at home for our forecast on Saturday afternoon. And if you do see anything, it should mainly be of shower variety, not necessarily a storm. But you can't rule it out this time of year. That's why I still do have the chance written on here. You pack the raincoat, you pack the umbrella, okay, you're prepared, and maybe you don't even have to use it. But your temperatures still should feel pretty nice over to the west, where we do have some highs forecasted maybe in the upper 80s, but mainly some mid to low 80s are going to be the temperatures that you're comforted to if you head over to, I forget what the stadium name is called. I think it's the Crampton Bowl. I'll have to double check that, but that's your forecast over in Montgomery. Back here at home in our neck of the woods here in central Georgia, mid 80s for highs both Friday and Saturday. I've elected for a 60% chance of rain, maybe not necessarily agreeing with what Future View has to say, but like I told you about what happened on Thursday, we definitely saw way better coverage of rain than we were anticipating. You can have that happen during this time of year. Future View doesn't do the best in terms of the coverage of rain during this time of year. If you have the ample ingredients, sometimes rain can fire up more widespread than what you are anticipating. But 60% I think should definitely cover the bases. We could see slightly more, but a 60% chance of rain gives you a good idea that you have a better than a 50-50 shot at receiving some rain, and I think that's the case for both Friday and Saturday. Morning lows still starting out somewhere in the low 70s, except for Sunday. We should see maybe a slight dip, about 3 or 4 degrees in that morning low temperature. 40% chance of rain, and I still think that's mainly going to be the evening hours when that frontal boundary actually does begin to try to pass through. High temperature of 88 degrees because, like I was showing you on Future View, we should have some clearing in the cloud cover finally. That should allow for a little bit more of a warm up on Sunday as opposed to Friday and Saturday. But let's go a little bit farther into the future. 80s all weekend long, and then you see that 90-degree mark on Monday. But I did mention that front's going to pass through pretty early on Monday, so we shouldn't see temperatures get as warm as they normally would during the summertime months. We're going to kind of see a clash of that cooler air trying to insert itself into our forecast as we go into Monday afternoon. So 90 for a high temperature, not too bad, but still 90 degrees obviously. And if you pair it up with any humidity that we still have left, that number could feel a little bit warmer, but we'll take a look at that on our next graphic. You do see 88 on Tuesday, indicating that, yes, we do have a little bit of cooler air that is going to be inserted behind our frontal boundary, but we don't stop there. I have even more better news to show you once we pop up the 7-day forecast. Humidity day by day, we'll see a steady downtick, but still noticeably humid all the way through Sunday. And then Monday, we start to see a more comfortable humidity settling in. before Tuesday, we really drop some of those dew point temperatures down. How about dew point temperatures in the 50s? We've been very grateful if we can even get some light green shades on that dew point temperatures map very lately. So if we can get no color whatsoever on the humidity map, that is going to be absolutely amazing. And that's what's going to kind of contribute to maybe a bit of a false fall in the feel in the air. Not as much humidity like we typically see during the fall time. Tuesday, Wednesday, and continuing on to Thursday. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that we can keep that low humidity in the forecast as we go into Friday and Saturday for the first official week of college football. Week 1 will be next weekend for Labor Day weekend. So let's pick it up with the long-range models, and then we have a couple things to talk about tropics-wise, and we'll go over our rainfall amounts because the month of August, it's no secret to any of you, it has been a very, very wet one. Picking it up on Monday evening, it does look like we are almost entirely dry here in the state of Georgia. That frontal boundary looks to continue to push down towards the south and the southeast. And behind it, cooler and drier air will start to insert itself into our forecast. Maybe your occasional cloud cover on Tuesday and as we go into Wednesday. Some of the long-range models, you might see some shades of blue or some shades of green. The important thing with that is it's not widespread and we're not seeing them overlap one another. When they start to overlap, that means they're in pretty good agreement, and we don't see good agreement about the rain chances anywhere here in the southeast corner of the United States. If anything, we see the European still holding on to some moisture, and I would buy that the rain chances down in Florida are probably going to pan out like that just because it's summertime in Florida, and I don't think this frontal boundary is going to necessarily push all the way through Florida. Typically, we don't see those fronts sweep all the way through the peninsula of Florida. There still is going to be a pretty humid atmosphere remaining down in the Panhandle. Now we go down into Thursday next week where, okay, maybe we see that front start to fall apart a bit and some moisture tries to push back up into central Georgia. And right now the GFS is hinting at a pretty wet Friday as we go into the end of next week. This is anything but certain right now. Obviously, you do see the GFS widespread, and of course, that's probably giving me more confidence in at least a 20% chance of rain. But I don't see overlap between the blue and the green right here. This is just what one model run is saying, so don't go buying stock into this and thinking that Friday is going to be a washout. If we see better agreement over the next couple of days, and especially as we get into next week, then we'll up the rain chances for Friday. But right now, still not looking like anything definitive. We'll have to see if the European gets on board with this, and we'll have to double check with some of our other long-range models on the computers that we don't show you necessarily in the graphics. So let's check in on Hurricane Erin. As of Friday morning at 11 a.m., Hurricane Erin maintaining Category 1 status, winds of 90 miles per hour. Pressure is up to 956 millibars, which is really good to see because days of past in the work week, we have seen the pressure down to about 930 millibars, 940 millibars. So the higher that pressure climbs, the closer you get to 1,000 millibars. That's going to be a good sign of weakening associated with this hurricane. And once you get winds that get below 74 miles per hour, that's when Hurricane Erin is going to go back to tropical storm status. But you do see that it transitions from that Category 1 icon into this low pressure icon. That's just because it's crossing a certain latitude in the Atlantic Ocean. This is still maintaining at least tropical storm status. In fact, Category 1 status. You see this Saturday stamp right here, still having 85 mile per hour winds. So it will still be a Category 1 hurricane as it continues to trek up to the north and the northeast. But right now it's simply just looking to be a fish storm. Areas of Nova Scotia up in kind of eastern Canada could see a couple of outer bands of showers, maybe a couple of gusty winds, but it's moving farther away from the U.S. and that's the main point that I do want to hammer in. If we can see another timestamp, let's see Sunday here, still maintaining 90 mile per hour winds. So Hurricane Erin should be a Category 1 hurricane for the foreseeable future, at least through the weekend, but it is interacting with some cooler water up here in the northern Atlantic. I wouldn't be surprised to see it really weaken. But you can see the top of the cone, and I forgot to change the key selection on this graphic. It does look like it's going to kind of meander by Iceland in the United Kingdom as it makes its way over to Europe. Maybe not even pose any impacts to those areas, but a couple of showers, maybe some increased moisture for some rain chances. Overall, not having any more impacts to the U.S. There are other areas of focus that we do have. So as of 8 a.m. on Friday, we get these updates on these potential areas of development every 6 hours each day. So 2 a.m., 8 a.m., and then 2 p.m., and then 8 p.m. Be sure to follow for the latest updates over the course of this weekend, especially with this system right here that you see outlined in red. So what we like to call these areas, we have these red shades, we have these yellow shades, and the orange shades. It's a big bowl of fruit in the tropics. And once you get a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different areas outlined, you know you're starting to approach the peak of tropics or of tropic season, especially here in the Atlantic. But when you have a red shaded area, that means one of the chances of development are 70% or greater. That's when you have a high chance of development. And this system right here, following behind Aaron, almost a direct path until it's really gotten to the northeast of the Caribbean right now, it looks like it's taking the same northward turn that Aaron did just a little bit earlier. So that's great news for us in the U.S. But if you have any cruise plans to the island of Bermuda, not necessarily looking like the best case. 80% chance of developing over the next 48 hours. I would imagine it's later on Friday or really early on Saturday that we actually do get our next named storm out of this batch of showers and thunderstorms just here kind of now in the western portion of the Atlantic Ocean. But it does have a 90% chance of developing past that 48-hour window. So pretty good chances of developing with this. But once again, it's expected to make a northward turn. It'll probably have some impacts on the island of Bermuda, but how strong this system does form into category-wise for a hurricane is still yet to be seen. Let's check in on this little yellow X right here. And I've been referring to this as the itsy bitsy spider because the National Hurricane Center did outline this area as of Thursday afternoon, and they gave it a 30% chance of development right off the rip, which I thought was actually kind of crazy. Now we can't see anything on the satellite and radar imagery, 0% chance of developing. Don't even know why there's still a yellow X there. It was just kind of some pulse convection that happened in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's not going to do anything. And if this even still is anything right here, it was moving over towards the east. So that's not going to have any implications for us in the United States. This is another area that I'm probably keeping the closest eye on because I know obviously Aaron is continuing to move farther away. This other area that does have very high chances of development is going to move away from the United States, and it's going to kind of take that northward turn that Hurricane Aaron did. But this area has a 40% chance of development over the next 48 hours and a 50% chance of development past that 48-hour window as of Friday morning. So obviously not the most impressive chances of development, but still about a 50-50 shot as we go kind of into your extended forecast. And take a look at this shaded area. It is going almost directly to the west. It looks like this could very well pose some impacts in the Lesser Antilles, maybe northern South America. And if it moves into the Caribbean Sea, those sea surface temperatures are going to be pretty warm. It could definitely start to intensify, but the path past this is really anyone's best guess. So this is anything but certain if it's going to hit the United States, but it does have a general path that would run into some warm ocean waters that warrant keeping an eye on, but it's still yet to be seen if this is going to get its act together and develop. As of the 2 a.m. update that we got on Friday morning, it had a 50% chance over the next 2 days of developing and a 60% chance of developing over the next week. So the chances have gone down a little bit, and I imagine that's because it's kind of interacting with this dust plume right here that's really stretching over into the center of the Atlantic Ocean. As it continues to move over towards the west, it should kind of get out of that dust plume and run into a more conducive environment for development. So I would say of these three technically areas of development, 2 of them definitely have a good chance of becoming our next named storms. So we'll go into your 2025 hurricane names list for the Atlantic Basin. We've had 5 named storms so far, and Aaron was the latest to take a name off that list. The F and G names are going to be next on this hurricanes list, and it looks like that red area will probably claim the name Fernan. I have been mispronouncing it all week. I've been doing some digging and watching other meteorologists and National Weather Service employees pronounce it as Fernan. So obviously it looks like Fernand. The D is silent. Fernan would be the official name, but I don't think Fernan is going to be anything to worry about. Then this next system that we were just talking about that's going kind of into the Caribbean and the Lesser Antilles, the name to claim after that would be Gabrielle. And then eventually we'll get into the second column of names, which is going to start with Umberto. The H is silent on that name. So you can tell I've been doing my research and kind of my syllable practice with all the pronunciations. All of these names are typically kind of pronounced in a general way, how they normally do sound, but there are a couple names that you have to do some digging and they have some specific pronunciations. So in the month of August, like I was referring to, it has been a very, very wet month. If we count all these days that you can kind of see this light blue highlighted column, we have 5 days right here and another 5 days in a row where we did record some form of rainfall at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. We got 11 and 12 days that we actually recorded rainfall, the latest of which did come this past Thursday evening with those showers and thunderstorms. Some of them did make their way into southern Bibb County. So it's no secret that we're hovering in the very wet category for the month as a whole, which is the complete opposite of the month of July. We were in the exceptionally dry category, but overall 2025 has been a pretty wet year. We'll talk about that in just a moment. In the month of August, though, we have recorded 6 inches of rain, just over 6 inches of rain, in fact. So we're getting really close to double average where we should be this time, or for the month of August as a whole, and we still have about another 10 days left in the month. The record of just over 12.5 inches doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be hit, especially when I show you what the 7-day has in store as we go into next week, which isn't a bad thing whatsoever. It's just been a pretty wet month of August. So now we'll take a look at 2025 as a whole. We already referred to it just a little bit. I actually forgot to update this number. You saw it was just over 4 inches above average. So go ahead and remember that. But I did update this box. We are over 3 inches above where we should be this time of year during the month of August. It has been very, very wet, but still somehow not as wet as the month of May and the month of June. These 3 months by themselves have really done a very, very good job at keeping us above average. The only month that we were really, really dry was the month of July. We got a dry start to the year, had a couple months, March and April were just slightly above average, and then a very wet May and a very wet June really did a good number at putting us above average. July kind of knocked that number down back close to average, but August has seen it uptick once again. So now going into your 7-day forecast, and then I'll show you a little bit more about what I'm talking about with kind of the last 3 days on your 7-day forecast in just a moment. In the 80s all weekend long, pretty impressive rain chances Friday and Saturday. Still, once again, on again and off again rain. You will have some off periods, and a great tool to utilize over the course of this weekend will be our live radar stream, which is looping continuously on 13 WMAZ+. If you're wanting to grill out, maybe see some gloomy skies and you're afraid that it's going to rain on your parade, well, go ahead and hop over there. You can pick apart where the rain is, and maybe if you can get about an hour or two window to head out to the grill and fire it up to grill some burgers and dogs and enjoy some college football with friends and family. We will see a warming trend into Monday, but like I said, not going to be as warm Monday because that front will have already passed through. We're going to start to see that cooler and drier air try to make its appearance, but we're really going to notice it for the first time on Tuesday. Low of 65, 64 on Wednesday, and 63 next Thursday. Yes, that's definitely going to have a fall feel in the air. Along with that, we're not going to have the very sticky and muggy atmosphere that we've had most mornings to walk out the door to. And the rain chances, 20% that I'm holding on to for Monday as of right now. It may just be a little bit into the afternoon before the front finally does officially pass through. But 10% on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That's overshooting it from what I just showed you on the long range models. Just want to make sure that we're covering the bases. It is still summertime here in central Georgia, but it's a little bit atypical to get a really strong front like this already in late August. We start to see those strong fronts really make an appearance once we get into the fall season. But I think everyone is going to be very, very excited for a bit of false fall weather, at least during the first half of the day. We still will warm up somewhere in the 80s. I'm going to need some highs in the 70s before I really do start declaring it fall. But this is going to be very comfortable, somewhere around 8 degrees below average, paired up with some drier air, not going to have that sticky feeling as you walk outside. I think it's going to be a pleasant treat to look forward to, and we can see this reciprocated not only here in central Georgia, but many portions of the eastern half of the United States as this dark blue does creep closer and closer to us, even especially up in North Georgia. This time frame, August 27th into August 31st, so I do believe that's going to be next Wednesday or Thursday all the way through next Sunday. We have really good chances of seeing some below normal temperatures, actually going to hover near normal once you get to the Georgia and Florida state line. But up here, you can see the gradient does get sharper and sharper, and we continue to have greater probability of below average temperatures the farther north that you travel. So that'll do it for your extended forecast as you go about your weekend. Be sure to tune in all throughout the shows this weekend for the latest update on the tropics and our rain chances that we do continue to have. But hopefully we clear out by Sunday and we have a much more pleasant weather stretch to go into for the end of next week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday at 10:30.